They say churches are places of peace, but one Sunday morning in Texas, that peace was shattered in a way no one could have imagined. It was October 30th, 2005. Inside University Baptist Church in Waco, over 800 people had gathered to hear their beloved pastor speak. His name was Kyle Lake, 33 years old, full of energy, and known for bringing life and laughter to the pulpit. He wasn't your average pastor. Kyle played pranks, made people laugh, and brought a new generation into faith. His wife and 3 young kids were sitting just across the hall that morning. They had no idea it would be the last time they'd see him alive. That morning, Kyle had just finished his sermon. Then, he invited a young woman up to the front of the church. The congregation applauded. It was time for her baptism. A special moment Kyle always led himself. He stepped into the baptismal pool, warm, waist-high water, and turned to welcome her. But then, something went wrong. His microphone cut out. Not a big deal, really. The church was large, so sound mattered. But Kyle spotted a backup mic right beside him. Without leaving the water, he reached out and grabbed it. In the moment his hand touched the microphone, he screamed. At first, people smiled. This was Kyle. Maybe another prank, another surprise. But then the screams changed. Help, help me. The church froze. Some people bowed their heads in prayer. Others ran to get help. A few rushed toward the stage. It was already too late. But by then, Kyle collapsed in the water. In front of his wife, his children, his congregation. He was rushed to the hospital, but he never made it. So what happened? It turns out there was another malfunction no one saw coming. The pool's water heaters meant to keep the baptismal water warm that pool was electrically charged. And when Kyle reached for that mic, he grounded the current. Electricity surged through his body. The voice that brought sermons to life was gone. An investigation followed. Kyle's wife would later sue the company that installed the faulty system and settled for an undisclosed amount. But no amount of money could undo what happened. A baptism meant to welcome new life had taken one instead. It was a quiet Sunday evening in Ontario, Canada. August 15th, 1971. 23-year-old Michael sat alone in his living room. The late summer light spilled across his photo albums. Snapshots of mountain biking trails, whitewater rapids, and deep-sea dives. Michael lived for adventure, but on that day, adventure came looking for him. There was a sudden knock on the door. Michael opened it to find a frantic police officer. The clock was ticking, and no one could find him. A man had gone missing while swimming in a nearby lake. The officer had gone door to door asking the locals, who has scuba gear? Who knows how to dive? And every answer pointed to one name, Michael. At first, Michael offered his gear, but then he paused. He knew better. Diving into uncertain waters isn't just about equipment. It's about training, instincts, control. So Michael made a decision. I'll go with you, he said. Let me dive myself. On one side stood a dam, and beyond that, a winding river. The lake was about 30 minutes away. Michael and the officer sped through the trees until they reached a clearing. A vast lake lay before them, glass still and silent. Dozens of people had gathered. Park staff, police, tourists. No one was in the water. Everyone was waiting, hoping, watching. Michael suited up on the shoreline. He scanned the lake. It was huge. There was no clear starting point. And then, a ripple, right in the middle of the calm water. One small disturbance, as if something had just slipped below. Michael pointed. I'll start there, he said. He waded in, waist deep. The crowd held their breath. Then he vanished beneath the surface. 15 minutes passed. The officer who had brought him stood at the water's edge, surrounded by the missing man's family. Silence. And then, shouting. A search volunteer came sprinting from the other side of the dam. Come quick, he said. We found something. The officer ran. He reached the riverbank behind the dam, where a crowd had gathered. He pushed through, and what he saw was not the missing swimmer. It was Michael. His lifeless body had been pulled from the river, still partially tangled in pieces of his diving gear. The truth unraveled quickly. Hours earlier, in a panic to help, a park employee had made a fatal mistake. Without telling anyone, he had entered the dam's control room and opened a valve. The valve activated a massive drainage pipe, 30 feet long and 2 feet wide, designed to siphon water from the lake into the river. The employee thought draining the lake would help find the missing swimmer, but no one had actually searched the water before opening it. Michael was the first. That ripple he saw, it wasn't a swimmer. It was the pull of the draining current, a deadly vacuum created by the open pipe. The moment Michael submerged, the water sucked him in violently. His equipment was torn away. He was dragged into the pipe, trapped, and drowned. Eventually, the current forced his body through to the river, where it was discovered. 4 hours later, the original missing swimmer's body was found. He hadn't been in the river. He hadn't been pulled into the pipe. He had drowned quietly, just 150 yards from where Michael had first entered the lake. Today, that lake has been permanently drained. A tragedy meant to save one life, claimed another instead. And all because someone tried to help without thinking what the water was hiding below. It was just after 5 a.m. on June 28, 1988, in Auburn, Indiana. 25-year-old Jeffrey Link was already at work inside the Bastion Plating Company, a small factory that specialized in chrome-plated automotive parts. That morning, Jeffrey stood alone in the factory's supply room. He reached up, grabbed a container off the shelf, just part of his daily routine, and walked out into the main floor. Jeffrey had been a machine operator at Bastion for some time now. The work was hot, loud, and dangerous. Massive industrial machines ran constantly. Many of them reached searing temperatures. Burns and blisters were just part of the job. But Jeffrey didn't complain. The pay was solid. The factory crew was tight-knit, more like family than co-workers. In a tough environment, they looked out for each other. That morning, Jeffrey made his way across the factory floor, nodding to co-workers as he passed. He was headed for one of the large metal tanks, a machine scheduled for maintenance. It wasn't unusual. In fact, crawling inside one of these tanks to clean them was standard practice. No one thought twice when Jeffrey climbed into the tank with his cleaning solution in hand. And then seconds later, a loud thud echoed through the building. A co-worker standing nearby turned and peered into the open hatch of the machine. Inside, Jeffrey was lying motionless on the floor of the tank. At first, the man couldn't tell what he was seeing. Maybe Jeffrey had slipped. Another employee sprinted toward the tank to help Claire, climbed in after him and collapsed instantly. Then 2 more workers followed and dropped, just like the others. Panic erupted. One of the stunned onlookers ran from the building and called 911. By the time he returned, the scene had turned surreal. More workers had begun to crowd around the machine, but something was wrong. People were stumbling, vomiting, collapsing where they stood. When emergency responders arrived minutes later, they too were overcome almost immediately. Dizzy, nauseous, barely able to stand. It was as if the air itself had turned toxic. And in a way, it had. When hazmat teams entered the factory later, in full protective gear, they investigated the tank Jeffrey had entered, and they examined the container he had brought with him. And that's when the horrifying truth came out. The tank Jeffrey had entered had recently been used to store zinc cyanide, a highly dangerous chemical compound. Had accidentally grabbed the wrong one. To clean it, a special non-reactive cleaning solution was required. But Jeffrey, the chemical he brought, reacted instantly with the leftover zinc cyanide residue, and that reaction produced a colorless, nearly undetectable cloud of hydrogen cyanide gas, the same compound used in gas chamber executions. The moment the gas formed inside the enclosed tank, it was lethal. Jeffrey collapsed immediately. So did the co-workers who rushed in after him. But what made it worse was the gas didn't stay inside. As it began to seep out into the open factory, it silently filled the air, affecting everyone who breathed it, even those just walking nearby. In total, 39 people were hospitalized. 5 of them died, including Jeffrey, the 3 brave co-workers who tried to save him, and another employee who was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. It took just one mistake, one wrong container on one shelf, and a tragedy unfolded that stunned an entire town. Today, Bastion Plating no longer exists, but the lesson does. In places where safety hinges on small decisions, where chemicals and machines coexist, the smallest error can take everything